Imagine trying to escape a Siberian prison camp in the middle of a snowstorm. No food, no map, one wild plan to get south, into freezing wilderness, scorching desert, and massive mountains. In 1941, 7 men tried. Only one of them was able to tell the tale. Let me tell you a story about the long walk to freedom. It was 1941. While the world was caught up in a huge war, there was this man, Slawomir Rawicz, trying hard to survive inside a Soviet prison camp. Camp 303 was a bitter, frozen nightmare in Siberia, where prisoners worked themselves nearly to death, cutting trees and building makeshift huts in weather that dropped to minus 40 degrees. Rawicz wasn't even meant to be there. He was a Polish cavalier officer who had been arrested by the Soviets, beaten for weeks, and thrown into jail for 25 years for something that he never did. Yet, in that camp, full of men who had almost given up, he found a few who still had a fight left in them. There was an American engineer, everyone called him Mr. Smith, a Lithuanian prisoner named Marcinkowski, Eugene Zaro, a man from Yugoslavia, and 3 Polish soldiers, Kalemus, Paluchowicz, and Makowski. All very different men with different stories, but they all shared one burning wish: to escape that place. For months they watched the guards and figured out exactly when they changed shifts. They saved tiny bits of food, secretly snatching pieces of bread and dried fish, and hid them in their turn-up clothes. They studied every inch of the high fence, searching for any weak point. Then the chance finally came. A dark night with no moon in the middle of winter, with a storm so strong that the guards barely left their small huts. With his heart pounding fast, Rawicz gave a nod to the others. The 7 men snuck out of their cramped sleeping quarters and stepped into the blinding snow. Every step they took might have been the last. If anyone saw them, they knew they would be shot on the spot. Yet, somehow, they passed through the fences. They were free, but being free in the frozen lands of Siberia meant that the real challenge was just beginning. The cold was harsh. With only thin clothes, the icy wind stung every part of them. They had to keep moving. Stopping meant they would freeze. When the storms grew fierce, they dug small holes in the snow and huddled close, using each other's warmth to survive. They ate whatever they could find. They pulled up hidden roots from under the snow, picked wild berries, and sometimes even caught small animals when luck allowed. One night they came face to face with a pack of wolves. The wolves' yellow eyes shone dimly in the dark. The men formed a close circle, standing back to back and staying very still, while the wolves circled around them. For hours they remained motionless, every muscle tight, waiting for one wrong move. The rivers brought another danger. Ice that seemed solid could break suddenly, sending someone plunging into freezing water. For weeks they walked through endless forests and open lands, without maps or compasses, only the stars above, and hope that going south would lead them to freedom. Then slowly, things began to change. The heavy snow melted away, the dense forest thinned out, the air warmed, even just a little. During the trek, they also met Christina, a young Polish girl with a story of escape of her own. She witnessed her parents being beaten and strangled with barbed wire by a Ukrainian mob as land was reclaimed from Polish farmers during the Soviet invasion. Her presence definitely added some kind of spark of energy to the tired group. With a new companion, they had made it out of Siberia alive. But ahead, a new challenge waited: the vast Gobi Desert. After the long freezing escape from Siberia, a new and brutal test lay ahead. They stepped into a land that offered no mercy, a place where nature's extremes fought for dominance. They moved from one extreme to another. Instead of fighting the cold, they had to struggle against relentless heat. Instead of endless snow, the water was very scarce. The Gobi stretched out like a vast sea of sand and rocks. In the daytime, the heat was almost too much to bear, beating down on their tired bodies. At night, it would suddenly turn cold, and their weak bodies found it hard to adjust. Water became everything. Every drop mattered. Their lips cracked and bled. They often found it hard to think clearly or move without water. They chose to walk in the cooler hours of sunrise and sunset, hiding in any shade during the burning midday heat. Sometimes days passed without finding any water. It was in the heart of the Gobi Desert that they lost first two men. Christina, who quietly drifted away, then Małkowski, who died in his sleep. Overcome by exhaustion and thirst, the body finally gave out. The remaining 6 posed only for a quiet funeral before moving on, as they had no choice but to keep going. Weeks blended into one long blur of heat and thirst. Then, as if by a small miracle, the land started to change. The air cooled a little, small plants began to grow, and in the distance, they saw mountains emerging. They had survived the Gobi, but now the greatest challenge lay ahead: the mighty Himalayas. After leaving the harsh desert, they entered towering mountains that promised both relief and new dangers. In Tibet, life felt completely different. The locals lived in a world of ancient traditions and harsh mountain life. Some Tibetans eyed the thin, tired strangers with suspicion, unease about their unfamiliar faces. For a time, the escapees even worried that they might be handed over to authorities. Yet aimed at that uncertainty, kindness emerged. Several villagers offered what little food they had and provided shelter, giving the group much-needed rest and renewed strength. The journey then led them into the heart of the Himalayan region, a land of breathtaking peaks and dangerous passes. Here, the mountains were both a blessing and a threat. In these harsh highlands, they encountered remote Tibetan monasteries. Gentle monks welcomed the escapees, sharing simple meals and words of quiet encouragement that resonated within the stone walls. Although language was a barrier, but gestures were humble. Yet, as they pressed deeper into the mountains, nature released their final challenges. Violent snowstorms, biting cold, and dangerous icy paths turned every step into a difficult test. One freezing night, Maciekowski also died in his sleep. Shortly before reaching India, Rawicz slid off a cliff, plummeted to his death. As 2 members fell victim to the harsh conditions, the bodies left behind among the rugged rocks and endless snow. Still, the remaining survivors pressed on. Their numbers reduced, but their resolve unbroken. Then, on a bright, clear morning, they reached a high mountain pass and looked down. Spread out before them were the vast plains of India, British territory, signaling that the safety was near. The sight of Indian soil stirred both a relief and a cautious hope, for they had nearly completed the journey that few can ever imagine. Reaching India was more than just the end of a long trek. It marked the success of the human spirit over the incomprehensible hardship. When they finally struggled in the British outpost, the British soldiers could hardly believe what they were seeing. At first, no one believed their story. A 6,437 kilometers walk on foot through Siberia, Mongolia, the Gobi Desert, and the Himalayas. It seemed too wild to be true. But the truth was written on their exhausted faces and on every painful step. In time, even doubters were convinced they had accomplished what everyone thought it was impossible. Of the original 7 who managed to escape the Gulag, Rawicz and 3 others survived to tell the whole tale. Few men holding the memories of 4 comrades who had given their life for freedom. Years later, Rawicz wrote his book, The Long Walk, which stands as a powerful reminder of what people can do when they are pushed to the edge. Despite the whole story, there's been some debate about whether the whole journey happened exactly as Rawicz described it. Some historians have questioned some parts of his account. The BBC did some research and found a British intelligence officer who said he interviewed a group of exhausted men in Calcutta in 1942 who had escaped from Siberia. A Polish engineer also claimed he translated for his interview. Whether this story is true or some parts were exaggerated, the core of the story has inspired many. Nowadays, the world is filled with stories like these, where human spirit's refusal to give up when freedom is on the line. But I think we still need to train ourselves of how to use those stories, to actually learn from them.